Tuesday the 16th of January at 10:30 in the morning. Attendance, I think everyone's here in person. I don't think we've got anyone joining us on the link. So there are no apologies for absence that I understand either, certainly not from members because all 8 members are here. Anyone on the officer side need to be notified? No. Declarations of interest then. Dev.
Thank you, Lead. I'm not aware of any interests to be declared unless members have any queries, but it's the usual advice. If you ask a question or enter into a debate about a specific matter on the agenda, then you can consider declaring an interest at that time. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Raise your hand if that does come up during the meeting. Which takes us to item number 4, which is the confirmation of the minutes from the Cabinet meeting on the 21st of November. Any matters arising from those minutes? Everyone happy with those as an accurate record then? That's carried. Number 5 is update on actions. I understand there are no outstanding actions from that meeting. Anything to update on that? If not, then we can move straight to item 6, which is the financial monitoring 2023-24 and revenue budget 24-25 update. And you have a handover initially to Sue.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning. In introducing this report, I want to start by outlining the latest revenue budget forecast for the 23-24 year. That's where we expect to end up on 31st of March this year. There has been a small downward adjustment to our end-of-year predictions since the last monitoring report, but it's improved significantly over our month 6 position, and I confidently expect to end the financial year with a favourable variance of around £1 million. We've achieved this position without excessive recourse to our reserves, and the forecast for the year-end reserves position is consistent with the previous reports. I've approved only limited new usage of the general fund since we last reported. There's a risk of repeating myself, but once again, I want to reinforce the value of our whole authority financial discipline. We've achieved a solid in-year performance against our agreed budget, and the end-of-year position will provide us with a helpful buffer as we face the year ahead. So turning to 24-25 then. When we received the provisional settlement, we were relieved to see that our assumptions were sufficiently prudent. That said, we'd not expected this to be an easy settlement for local government in Wales, and it isn't. We recognise the pressures that the Welsh Government is dealing with and its track record of protecting local authorities over the last 5 years. And we also recognise that Torfaen's uplift of 3.24% is in the upper half of the table of Welsh local authorities. But given the cost pressures on pay, the continued impact of a period of exceptionally high inflation, that uplift will not go far enough. We face a big challenge to maintaining our services and an even greater one to achieving improvements for our communities, but we remain committed to both of those aims. We need to note that Welsh Government grants are reducing overall across Wales, and we're carefully monitoring the impact of that, as many of these grants underpin services we now consider to be core to achieving our aims. Of course, the final settlement will be in March, and we continue to lobby Welsh Government on some key issues that are still to be determined. I'm sure the Leader will have more to say on this, and I'd like to thank him for the role he plays so well as Welsh Local Government spokesperson for finance. With a degree of uncertainty always factored in, I'm extremely pleased to see that Torfaen's already seeing its way to a balanced position for 24-25. A forecast that takes us within 38,000 of landing that particular helicopter on that especially small postage stamp is worth little cheer, I think. You know, if anybody feels like cheering at this time of the morning. But in a parched and arid Tory-dominated public sector landscape created over 13 years of austerity, we have at least managed to establish a small oasis to keep us going. I know that Nigel and team will explain the careful and forward-thinking actions that have brought us to that point. But before he does, I want to thank members of this council for being willing to take prudent and sensible decisions. I know that our relentless pursuit of improvement and value for money means we all have to be both realistic and, importantly, open to change. I know that realism isn't glamorous, and I know that change can be very uncomfortable. thank you to members for our efforts to make sure we're always able to provide essential services to those in greatest need. I also want to thank our Chief Executive, Nigel, and all our officers for their dedication to securing the greatest impact for our communities with the very limited resources available to us. I refer Cabinet colleagues to the recommendations of para 12 of the report. As a budget setting process for 24-25 is finalised, we will come to scrutiny, Cabinet and Council with further reports, and I look forward to working together in the same cooperative and constructive spirit. Thank you.
I'm here. Unlike the confused, I just sat in a different place. There we are. People to my left hogged my seat, so there we are. I'm on the right this time. I'll just canter members through. Yeah, it seems like a bit of Billy No-Mates down here, mind. Cabinet are all up there as well. I'll just canter members through the report. I mean, the executive member has covered the key points. First part of the report is the financial forecast for the current year, and it is pleasing. We're under, and we're under on what was a difficult budget when we set it. The reasons for the variances are there. I mean, in terms of pressure areas that we need to work through, there's obviously some pressure in the system around children's and children's placements in particular, and the economy and environment budget in its totality in terms of the pressure. And we'll be having conversations with both those areas, both to try and mitigate it in the current year, but more importantly to make sure there's no repetition going forward. There's a range of other positive variations that are brought out, but in overall terms, to be having an underspend which does improve our financial resilience and does help us going forward into 24, 25 and beyond. I mean, I think is important, and we mustn't lose sight of that. There's some commentary on the mitigations, which haven't changed much, and again show a good position in terms of achieving the mitigations. Next part of the report just brings members up to date in terms of reserves and where we think the reserves forecasts are and what has come out of the reserves. So then we go on to the meat of the report in terms of 24-25 and the provisional settlement. And in 6.1 we break down the parts of the settlement. The executive members already referred to the fact that all Wales it's 3.1%. So the Welsh Government did honour the forward protection. A forward projection, which is important because that was the basis on which we planned, so that is encouraging. But it's a settlement that doesn't meet the pressures the local government is facing, and obviously gives challenges. There's a range across Wales, which is outlined there in the report, and we were just slightly above 3.1% to 3.24%. There's no amalgamation of grants within the provisional settlement. They will come into the final settlement. There has been a rationalisation programme within education grants, and importantly, all education grants are now going to be received by the local authorities rather than the consortia, which will change the dynamic there in terms of how that operates, and that's something we've got to work through. And there were a couple of significant reductions in grants, and they're outlined in the report, as is the NNDR multiplier and the NNDR relief. So we've obviously got the All Wales grant figures, and we've got our settlement. So then we were able to move towards, as the executive member says, trying to balance a budget. So 7.1 just recaps members where we were when we agreed the proposals pre-Christmas on the basis of the previous scrutiny. And then in 7.2, we detail all the work that's been done to address that 2.8 gap and get within 38,000. Obviously, things change as the budget's going on, so although we achieved the mitigations to balance where we were pre-Christmas, we've obviously had additional cost pressures which we have to recognise, and they're outlined in 7.3. and they speak for themselves. But I would pick out that we've obviously built in the allowance to move to our staff onto the real living wage. That's factored in to these set of proposals, which is a continuation of our policy. 7.4 then brings it together to get to the 38,000. Just one final thing to say on the savings and mitigations. There are going to be one or two minor changes within the education ones as things have moved on since the publication. One or two of those are not going to manifest themselves quite as written, but they will be there for scrutiny. It doesn't affect the overall quantum or the balance of the budget. So then 7.6 starts to bring that together in terms of what it'll look like when we go in on the 27th of February to full council. In terms of risks, they're all laid out for members in 9.1, and I won't go through them one by one. I'm sure members will be able to read those for themselves, but they cover the whole range from inflation and pay, and the fact that we don't have all the grants, and some assumptions we're making around funding for pensions. And then in terms of what's next, we obviously go to cross-cutting and scrutiny on the 31st of January, which will include the full proposals. Cabinet will obviously then consider its final proposals on the 20th of February. Then we'll set the council budget on the 27th of February. Just need to be mindful at the moment that obviously the final settlement is due in the first week in very early March. We're not expecting any significant changes, not to the underlying assumption, but we'll be alive to that. I'm sure we'll have information, and if the worst happens and we need to move the council back, well, obviously we will do that. And obviously these and the pre-Christmas proposals effectively are the basis for our consultation on the budget as well. Thank you, Leader.
Great, thank you, Nigel, and thank you, Sue. Very much appreciative for that outline and also the approach that's been taken and the sensible management of budgets. That's one of the things that stands in our favour as we deal with these difficult situations. As does the long run-up we've had at this budget. I think we've been working on it since February, I think, this year, or last year, I should say now. So that's 11 months, and I think that long-term approach to the budget means that we get to take more long-term decisions and aren't boxed in by taking immediate decisions in the same way that we would have been if we'd have started later. So I think that's a definite advantage. As are the outturn the outturn that's been described. We're not trying to catch up with savings that haven't been made or big overspends in year, which would make a difficult situation even worse. And that's because I think we've taken that same long-term view in previous budgets. I think that's the importance of the outturn reports, which sometimes get lost a little bit in figures. What we're not having to deal with, I think, is the important part of that outturn. We're not having to deal with an overall overspend that then needs in-year measures, which tend to be short-term by their very nature, to claw it back, so we can put our full attention on balancing next year's budget. And thank you to officers in resource and across the council for the way that they've approached that. I think that puts us in the best position to deal with the winds that we face, but it doesn't make it easy. People have seen the reports, especially from over the border in England over the last couple of weeks, about the number of councils who are in real financial difficulty. And sometimes that can just be sort of dismissed as administrations or bureaucracies reporting difficult financial times, but it has a real-world impact on people who rely on services and also the people who work to provide those services. And I'm very conscious of the impact on local government staff across the country of what is the 14th year now of continual cuts, continually being asked to do more with less. That has an impact on staff. We all know the situation they faced with real terms cuts to their wages of around 20% over the past decade, but they've also continually being overstretched, and I'm very aware as a member that I'm quite often the one asking for more from our staff. I hope they realise that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the huge amount of work that they do, or that I don't appreciate that they're actually very often being asked to do more with a reduced team. You know, I was aware recently, for example, in cemeteries, I think we need to recognise that that's a team that's got fewer people in it than used to, and is being asked to do more work. And as much as we can try and work with them to get better outcomes for the residents we serve, because that's always our objective, we have to be good employers too, and recognise the strain that those staff are under, just as staff across the authority are, because these are, you know, men and women, most of whom live in our area, who work very hard, who have very often stressful jobs in areas like social care. You know, they can be, you know, very emotionally draining jobs as well. So I think we have a duty of care to them as their employers, as well as a duty of care to our residents to push for the best possible outcomes. So I believe this budget gives us the platform to do both of those things, whilst of course balancing. We don't have the situation that other parts of the public sector have, where we can just sort of forget about balancing and get bailed out. You know, that's forever maybe a point of wryness amongst councillors and council leaders especially, but you know, we do have to balance our budgets. We do have to make the difficult decisions that are necessary, because if we didn't, the alternative would be even worse, would result in greater cuts, as we're seeing elsewhere in the United Kingdom now, will result in commissioners taking decisions away from local people. And, you know, the last thing we want is fire sales across the UK. So the impediment really is on the government to act, to work out a way of securing a future for local public services. So I think in the absence of concerted government intervention, then financial intervention, I should say, then the reality will be more and more councils struggling to balance their budgets. We also face, of course, systemic challenges in areas like social care, of trying to piece together a system that's forever fragmented and sort of bursting at the seams. I'm really conscious of the need to protect schools in the post-pandemic environment especially. We've seen our schools, those of us who are governors, which I think is all of us around the table, see the challenges they face in dealing with some of the longer-term impacts of the pandemic, and some of the well-being and behavioural challenges that schools are facing as a result. I'm proud that this budget does a really good job of trying to protect schools as best we can, so that we don't end up with lots of school staff being made redundant as a consequence of cuts in those budgets. I think, as a councillor, very often our attention is drawn to the very visible services in our communities. You know, potholes, paths, roundabouts, stuff like that, waste collections, and they're very important. But of course, 3/4 of our budget is dealing with social care, which most people don't see on a day-in, day-out basis, but is vital for the continuance of people's lives, vulnerable young people, vulnerable older people, disabled people who rely on those services. We've got a responsibility to them, as well as to the very visible services. We also have a responsibility to the next generation of young people in Torvine to provide them with the best possible start they can, and funding schools properly is one of the great points of that. I'm proud that we've moved up the table continually in the last 6 or 7 years in terms of per capita funding in education. I think that's an important part of giving our schools the best possible foundation to build upon, and I know Richard, as Cabinet member, is very strong on that too. Sue mentioned the lobbying role that I have nationally for local government in lobbying Welsh governments. And that, again, is a balancing act, really. I'm very appreciative of the fact that Rebecca Evans, as Finance Minister, has taken a real open and constructive approach with us as local government leaders. She talks to us, she listens to us, even when we give her an ear bashing. She's willing to engage with us in a way that colleagues over the border just don't have. And that is very valuable, because we can work through things together and we can try and resolve issues together, but it doesn't make the financial situation easy at all. So I will continue to lobby on that. There are issues around the social care workforce grant, issues around teachers' pay that I'm continuing to lobby on as we approach the final budget. And of course we'll continue to make that central point, in that no one values our NHS more than than we do. However, we have to continue to fund the social care sector and health and social care as one, rather than just funding the NHS and then unpicking social care, which then burdens the NHS with even more demand in the medium to long term. That is a false economy, and that's a point that we'll continue to make sure that when we look at the health and social care sector, social care isn't, the poor relation in that respect. Social care is what can keep people out of hospital, is what can keep people living independent, fulfilling lives, and keep that pressure off the NHS so that it can deal with people that really need to have that health treatment. And we need to move to that situation. In my view, we need to talk about some form of national care service to get that equality of esteem and parity working there. That's a longer term thing, but in the short term, we'll continue to lobby for as much recognition of the importance of social care in the financial decisions that keep being made. Any questions on the recommendations before I move to them? Anything Sue want to come back on? Or Dave?
No questions, just commentary really. I totally agree with your point around social care being a preventative service, and contributing towards the sustainable model of well-being and social care and health in the country. I think we do need to have a renewed focus on preventative and early intervention, and I think that means helping our social care system do what it does best, because you are right in saying that we prevent people from needing to go to hospital in the first place. We help people. We've seen the flip side, which is that the system has been backed up because we haven't been able to discharge people from hospital. So the flip side of that is that if you help the social care system deliver, we can get people out of hospital faster and prevent them from going there in the first place. So it's exactly right. And, on a regional basis, I know that we're having a renewed focus in the RPB, Regional Partnership Board, on prevention and early intervention. What I was going to talk about was my annual thing around the adult services underspend, which is that to caveat it, that it's not a good thing. I know it's written as favourable, and I know that that's just a general term that we use, but it is the result, as the commentary suggests in the report, of not being able to recruit to a good many roles. I'm hoping that this will be the last year that I will have to make that sort of caveat, because we've got currently a redesign of reablement and the open door, which will hopefully deliver a service that is more effective and that just makes a lot more sense. So as part of that, we're taking £1 million out of the system and just reconfiguring everything. So I'm hoping that this will be the last year I have to caveat it. And hopefully next year we'll be having a leaner but more efficient system, which will hopefully deliver in the roles that are taken up. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the reduction in the homeless grants that we received from Welsh Government. It's at 6.1, we're talking about a reduction of 10 million over the next 2 years. I've got concerns over this because we have a greater ask from Welsh Government, one of which is the last item in this agenda. But the other ask is the white paper that we've got forthcoming on homelessness. So we've got a greater ask from Welsh Government to do what is right and deliver a system change in how we handle homelessness. And we have this contradiction of this reduction in funding. It is very frustrating because the simple truth of it is that in order to deliver on homelessness, we do need that money. We do need more money to do so. I mean, it's totally, I'm totally appreciative of the Welsh Government's financial situation. The money is just not there, and they have had to find savings from some places. But it's incumbent on me to point out that contradiction between that greater ask and our willingness to deliver on it, but that reduction in funding to do so.
Okay, points very well made on homelessness funding and the expectation that and the budget to do it on recruitment and social care, and also recruitment in other areas. I think we're finding it harder to recruit to several areas than we have for a long time. I think that's most general and acute in social care, but it also affects areas like planning and legal services, I know too, as well as other areas. On early intervention and prevention, it's a point that you make well and have been making well for years. And I think one of the reasons that we have such a favourable position and that we are in a better position than some other councils is the points that you and others have made and the role that you've played in making sure that early intervention and prevention has formed a part of our budgets 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I think that's now putting us in a better position moving forwards. So that's certainly something that I think yourself and others who've lobbied for long-term decisions that put early intervention and prevention at the heart of decision-making should be recognised for. And the point you make about regional working is a good one as well. We're not going to face all these issues alone. We need to work with regional partners, other councils, the Health Board, other public service organisations across Gwent and South Wales, certainly to try and address the issues that we face together, because most of them are common issues. All councils are dealing with the same issues around social care, around budgets and funding. People are at different stages of that development, so I think that's important to take those together. Any other points, questions people want to make? Are we happy then to move to recommendations at 12.1? It's recommended that Cabinet notes the current year forecast, that we note the provisional settlement announcement as it affects Tormand County Borough Council, that we endorse the measures currently proposed to address the forecasted 24-25 position, and we note the timetable for the remainder of the 24-25 budget cycle, including the scrutiny meetings that they mentioned. We all happy to agree? Right, thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Sue, to Nigel and your colleagues for that report. The next report then is the Raising the Rate Improvement Plan, and if I hand over initially to Mandy for this.
Thank you, Leader. As members know, we were set targets by Welsh Government to achieve a higher recycling rate of 70%. This resulted in us consulting with the public with proposals to have 3 or 4 weekly refuse collections, and after listening to our residents, we halted the proposals and have been working on a Raise the Rate campaign, an improvement plan and roadmap. This improvement plan was formed as a result of issues experienced by the Waste Collection Service in recent years, with the added pressure of the Welsh Government targets rising from 64 to 70%, alongside the increasing associated fines for failing to hit the targets. Torfaen have delivered many best practices to increase the rate in line with the government blueprint. However, there are still large quantities of recycling material in the purple-lidded bins. We are at substantial fines from Welsh Government if we cannot demonstrate a clear vision and action plan to increase our recycling rates. It also ensures we're committed to achieve our ambitions, which were set out in our Climate Change Emergency Declaration. To demonstrate Torfaen's dedication to improving the recycling rate and waste collection service, the Improvement Plan programme has been implemented to show the strategic vision for waste across 5 different work streams, which include service quality, recycling offer, infrastructure, business and engagement. All 5 work streams align with the county plan, wellbeing objectives and our Climate Emergency Declaration. With these in mind and closely working with local partnerships, RAP and our AIG, a roadmap has been developed to show the strategic improvement plan for the waste collection service and how it will elevate its recycling performance to meet 70%. The report in front of you highlights what each work stream has successfully delivered and what the Waste Department are committed to deliver to ensure the success of the strategic vision implementation. I'll now hand you over to Mark Thomas, Deputy Director of the Environment, who can go through the report in more detail and answer any questions. And we have Lauren Walker, the Waste and Recycling Project Officer, is also on hand.
Thank you. As Councillor has suggested, the roadmap presented to Cabinet is a strategic visual interpretation of the strategic improvement plan. The roadmap identifies at a high level key activities are proposed for review and implementation over a 6-year period. As highlighted, there are 5 strategic work streams. These are 1. Service quality, 2. Exploring removal of barriers to adoption of recycling offer. Number 3, key infrastructure development. Number 4, business recycling. And number 5, engagement. As you can see on section 4.10, We've got design principles that underpin the strategic improvement plan. Very, very quickly going through those. The first one really is focusing on collection services, so there'll be high quality collection success rate. Containers tidily returned to point of collection, digital accessibility, and our services must always be customer friendly and focused. As has been undertaken by the Council, the service will listen and engage with customers and base their household intervention on data and evidence. Curbside sort is the Council's preferred collection methodology as well, and that aligns with best practice as highlighted by the Welsh Government. Additional materials will only be collected if they demonstrate a contribution to the recycling rate. There's efficiency in the collection methodology. The proposal is sustainable and cost-effective, and markets can be sourced. And that the Council has appropriate storage capacity to manage the materials post-collection. Going on into sort of the ask of Cabinet today, many of the actions in the roadmap and strategic improvement plan indicate timescales of bespoke reviews, which will come forward in due course, or improvements to business as usual. Excuse me. Cabinet is asked to consider and approve the documents which are in Appendix 1 and 2, which are namely the roadmap and the strategic improvement plan. These documents evidence the commitment of the leader gave in April 2023 to take stock and consider a different way forward. Endorsing the documents indicates the intention to take our residents on the journey with us and ensure that there is clarity and understanding at all levels on what will happen when it will happen, and what key reviews decisions will be made. Going on to the specific work streams, if I may. Work stream 1, obviously as is mentioned, covers service quality. Our mission statement here is to deliver a well-designed, reliable and effective service to enable us to reduce, reuse, recycle and compost more. There's no specific policy or financial ask of Cabinet today for this particular work stream. Work is ongoing with regards to staff and fleet resilience, and there's a bespoke digital modernisation project underway to improve customer-to-crew information. This will give better management and performance data to the service to help with this ongoing improvement journey, and this is being delivered within the existing medium-term financial plan budget envelope. The service is also delivering a bespoke Power BI dashboard, which will give crew-by-crew performance, not only on reported missed collections, but quality of collections, fleet reliability, accident data, tonnage data, to enable strategic decisions to be made around productivity, round optimisation, and insight into the behaviours of residents on rounds. This will be reported through the Council's Performance Management Framework and the governance framework of the Improvements Programme, such as the Accelerated Improvements Group and Strategic Partnership Board. Workstream 2 covers the recycling offer. The mission there really is removing barriers to recycling to ensure all residents have access to the recycling service, both current and future offerings. The following are proposed to be reviewed in a timely and aligned manner. So these are namely the continued extension of flat recycling, working with housing associations, which has proven to be positive so far, and private landlords. Additional containers for recycling at curbside, efficient and customer-focused provision of liners and containers to residents, additional absorbent hygiene collections. Garden waste, which covers extended collection services over winter months and alternative containers for terrace properties. Additional material collections and extended reuse and repair offerings. The Strategic Improvement Plan contains the above interventions, and each will be subject to a robust business case and risk/benefit analysis to inform decisions. Workstream 3 covers the resilient and sustainable infrastructure. Again, the mission statement is to provide the resilient infrastructure required to deliver the service fit for the future. In October 2023, AIG approved the proposal to formally stand down the TCOR project as submitted to the Welsh Government and as approved by Cabinet in autumn 2022. This means that the Council is now reviewing the long-term sustainable and resilient infrastructure. Cabinet is asked to endorse the AIG approval and give permission for a letter to be drafted from the leader to the Minister for Climate Change, advising of the necessary change of direction, and ask for in principle support for submission of a further business case for capital investment over 2024. RAP and local partnership officers are supporting the Council to undertake a full options appraisal to determine the future of an operational, cost-effective and sustainable future recycling transfer station. There's an ask of Cabinet to approve the project funding remaining in the capital programme with the existing resource of just over 1.3 million recommitted to the future scheme. Cabinet is asked to note that it is a complex and costly project. For over 15 years, Torfaen has been seeking improvements and a suitable site and has faced difficulties along the journey. Treatment of waste has to adhere to stringent environmental regulations and to ensure that optimum carbon outcomes and income levels, materials must be stored appropriately before onward use by the recycling market. Having a modern and fit-for-purpose RTS will allow for future materials to be brought on stream, as without the sustainable infrastructure, the aspirations of the overall strategic improvement programme cannot be realised. A key part of our public-facing recycling infrastructure is the Household Waste Recycling Centre. The current contractor is in the 7th year of an 8-year contract. The site is one of the best performing in Wales, consistently recycling over 80% and collecting over 30 different material streams for recycling. The HWRC contract also includes the management of the transfer station at New Inn, which manages some of the curbside collection materials such as food, garden and refuse. One of the options for the RTS is redevelopment of the site in New Inn. Is currently under contract. It is proposed that the contract is reviewed to determine the appropriate way forward, and a report will come forward to Cabinet at the appropriate time. Workstream 4 is business recycling, and the mission statement is to deliver a customer-focused business recycling service in line with future legislation. This has come about really by the new workplace recycling regulations, which requires business, public sector organisations and charities to present specified recycling materials for collection, separate from each other and separate from residual waste. Cabinet are asked to improve the business recycling principles. The principles and policy outlined below. I'm very quickly just going through those, if I may. The fundamental business principles for business recycling are residual-only contracts will not be offered even if businesses can prove that they have recycling contracts with other providers. If an existing customer refuses to take the recycling service, they will be asked to leave the service. The cost of the business service will be covered from the charges to customers. This also includes introducing an annual charge for the production of a waste transfer note, which will be reviewed each year in line with the Council's fees and charges policy. There must not be any recycling in the trade refuse bin, and a contamination policy will be drafted for approval, which allows the Council to protect itself as a collection body. The commercial refuse service will go fortnightly to complement existing household services. A weekly collection allowance will be made through engagement with specific businesses such as nurseries and care homes. The 20 current customers are present. Containers proposed need to be appropriate for businesses and collection needs, but the service will not be able to offer a large range of different size containers, as the vehicles used only have one bin lift fitted. Food and cardboard services must be collected weekly. We will have effective and strong engagement with current and future customers that will underpin all that we do. And in the short term, vehicles suggested are to be hired rather than procured, and that will allow the proof of concept as the service progresses. A draft business case has been drafted and details the current service offer, the customer base, the options reviewed, preferred options and the financial model built with support from local partnerships to ensure cost effectiveness, and that business model will come forward shortly. Cabinet is asked to note that the set-up costs of the new recycling service are being borne by the Shared Prosperity Fund. This includes purchase of costs of new bins, a delivery team and production of the branded marketing material to send to customers. Therefore, there is no financial ask of the Council for the successful implementation of this particular service improvement. The fifth and final work stream is education, communication and behavioural change. Again, the mission is to engage with our residents and businesses so that they can reduce, reuse, recycle and compost more. Torfaen wants to be ambitious. We want to raise the rate through working with and for our residents, using data, insight and a range of innovation, as well as tried and tested communication and education methods. We aim to increase recycling through winning hearts and minds. The Shared Prosperity Fund will fund over 2024 to 2025 a comprehensive communication behavioural change campaign, ongoing participation analysis to ensure a data-led approach for intervention, and doorstep stepping, which involves team members and partners engaging directly with residents to help them recycle. An area of consideration is governance and assurance. The Recycling Service Improvement Programme has been strongly supported corporately with advice, guidance and assurance from cross-party members, a range of partners, stakeholders and experts. AIG and SPB have been fully involved in the creation of the roadmap. Therefore, it's an appropriate time to review the governance framework as the improvement programme moves from definition into delivery. It's proposed that the membership, meeting frequency and terms of reference are reviewed to ensure they are fit for purpose moving forward. A report will be prepared over January 24, and this report seeks permission from the leader following engagement with board members to approve the new governance framework and membership. One of the key areas will be measuring the impact of the strategic improvement plan, and that contains the overarching measures for monitoring throughout the programme, and these include recycling rate, service quality, participation, round tonnage data, engagement communication and engagement insight. The financial implications are clearly laid out within the report, so I don't propose to cover those at the moment. The risks, again, are detailed within the report and are self-explanatory. So moving on to the actions to be taken following decision. Finalise the workplace recycling business case policies and charging structure and submit to Executive Member Environment for approval and communicate the pending charges for our customers ahead of 6th of April 2024 is when the new regs come in. Review the terms of reference, membership and meeting frequency of AIG and SPG and engage with the membership before putting proposals to the leader for approval. Write a letter from the leader to the Minister for Climate Change, enclosing the roadmap, closing the T-Corp project as funded, and reiterating Torfaen's commitment to high recycling in line with the Welsh Government's strategy and policy. Officers will also engage with senior officials at the Welsh Government on the roadmap, and obviously we will progress on developing the enforcement policy. Section 8 covers the recommendations which have been laid out for members to consider. That concludes my brief.
Thank you. Any questions or comments before we move to those recommendations? Peter.
Thank you, Executive Member and Mark, for that very comprehensive report. I was just a little bit curious about the role of enforcement, which is obviously a sensitive area. I just wondered, how are we going to engage with residents on that? And there's a sentence in paragraph 430 that says, officers do not want to wait until the summer 2024 to commence this work and delay implementation should it be needed. Does that mean it'll be around August, September time we'll be making decisions about whether enforcement is needed, and what evidence will we be using to make those decisions?
Hi, so yeah, just on your question there, so as part of the engagement and communication behaviour change approach, we will be gathering that participation data of our residents and we will be engaging. So alongside that, we will be collecting all of the data in terms of what we collect and where they go. So there'll be a combined approach of residents and what they're participating, how the engagement campaign goes. There will be that review process from that. And then that will, hopefully, a successful engagement will see our recycling rates increase. So it will just be those coming together for a review to then look at whether we've done enough through those steps to raise the rate. Yeah, so if unfortunately we can't, then we will have to look at other measures.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it is frustrating to see that a good proportion, is it 31% of the per lidded bin is food waste. It's really frustrating because we provide free bags, free caddies for inside, free brown bins for outside, and now we collect, well, we've collected weekly for a while now, so it's really difficult to know what more we can be doing in that respect. So I do understand the tendency towards enforcement. I mean, I do wonder whether we have given any trial or thought to incentivisation to put out your brown bin, whether that might be an additional perk to go down rather than going to enforcement. I mean, I'm not being specific, but it feels like an area where I hate the phrase, but thinking outside the box might be appropriate, because we've kind of reached that point where I don't know where else we can go with it. So whether incentivising people to participate in brown food waste recycling might be an additional thought, maybe.
Can I come back in on that? I mean, enforcement is going to be the last option. I mean, the key thing is to educate, door knocking. We can be knocking every door, asking people, have you got any barriers? Have you not got this? Have you not got that? You know, we're going to be trying everything, throwing everything at them. And then, you know, we've looked at this in AIG, SPB, further options available going down the line, but I think the main thing is the education and the door knocking, and hopefully we can get that participation level higher, and enforcement, we won't have to go down that route, but for some, I would imagine that we're going to have to.
And I'm not ruling it out. I was just trying to get a grip on the time frame and the evidence, that was all.
Thank you, Lee. Yes. Council is spot on in terms of, I think, engagement up to now has had limited success, and it's a clear recognition that we have to be far more proactive, not so passive in terms of engaging with our residents, make it easier for them to understand and access that information. So there are simple things that we can do in terms of leafleting, for example. Leafleting at the moment has been left on top in empty bins, whereas perhaps they need to be stuck to bins so the residents can easily see them and engage with that, and far more information provided in terms of the way they need to improve. So we're determined to go down that line first before relying on the last resort.
Yeah, can I just come quickly back in? I mean, I think it's good to note that the Raise the Rate campaign that we've had has shown already where we were. We were at 58%, and now we are seeing big improvements at quarter one and quarter two. And we are one of the most improved authorities for Wales this financial year as well. So I do think the campaign that we've already been put in place with the comms and, you know, roundabout signs and everything in the engagement is having an effect as well.
Yeah, thanks for this really really helpful report. Just two areas for me. One is sort of a longer term perspective on the waste management approach that we're taking in Wales, I suppose. And I think there is insufficient evidence, insufficient emphasis in the current system on reducing waste and reusing. And sometimes the emphasis on recycling is actually counterintuitive, and where people perhaps could make very good use of things, we're actually encouraging them to put them in to be collected. And in an area like Torfaen, with our sort of narrow streets and topography, collection is always going to be particularly difficult. The longer term, we really should be focusing so strongly on reduce and reuse that the residual waste goes down, but we're not measuring our success by how much stuff people give us. You know, they may have better uses for it themselves and be able to make use of it there. And I think that's something I'd really want to emphasise to Welsh Government, that we would want to see those targets, those incentives sort of adjusting and changing in the near future, really, so that we're not doing that counterintuitive thing of really seeking more waste when what we want is less waste. So that was the sort of philosophical one. The other was very practical. It's the question around the commercial service and the introduction of that service. It struck me that there's quite a lot of conditions now being placed on commercial premises in terms of participation in this. Are we confident we're not just going to drive them all into the arms of private collectors? I see that we've got the waste note, I presume, is our sort of regulation vehicle to ensure that we think they're adequately meeting the regulations. But I'm guessing that's quite an intense, labour-intensive, time-consuming thing to be checking on a regular basis once we've issued that note. So again, I think there's a risk by being very firm on those conditions that we might just drive firms into less scrupulous arms and people who do a lot less recycling than we would want them to do. So the costs and the benefits of that and the impact of it, I'd be interested to see how that was modelled. Similarly, the costs and benefits of hiring in the short term the collection fleet. What do we mean by short term? What do we mean by proof of concept? And in the longer term, might we be at risk of actually securing worse value for money by hiring for a protracted period and then having to purchase? So just sort of, it would be interesting to see some more data on that sort of thing. But thank you, a really detailed report and very positive.
I would like to thank Mark, Mandy and all involved in this. One thing that's sometimes forgotten in this debate is how much more complex refuse and recycling is now than it was maybe 30, 40 years ago. So I'd like to thank residents for their hard work, those that are recycling diligently, and also thank the teams for their hard work in all weathers. Certainly over Christmas this year with the monsoon that we seem to have, and then the cold weather since. I think it's easy to forget how difficult that job is of collecting in all weathers. So thank you to the teams. I think the other thing that can be forgotten by people who want to go back to the past is the reason for the fact that it's more complex than it used to be. We can't just go back to chucking everything in a single bin and sticking it all in the ground. That's not sustainable. It won't meet our net zero obligations. At the end of the day, who wants to live next door to a landfill site or an incinerator? And who wants to have us paying fines that, in the end of the day, have to be paid for out of our budgets? So that's why it can't be back to how it used to be. I think it's right. I'm pleased that we've tried to listen and that we want to work with residents to achieve this. But I think it's key that just isn't seen as a soft message. We're not taking the easy way out, but in order to make this work, everyone has to play their part. We just can't, I still see residual bins that have food in them, that have easily recyclable things like glass, paper, plastic and card in them that can quite easily be recycled. So I think that engagement is going to be very necessary looking at work stream 5. in engaging with residents and, if necessary, enforcing. I think that does come back to one of the things we saw in the consultation, where people said, look, I'm doing my best, but what about Imwara down the road who just chucks everything in a bin and then complains that it's too full at the end of a fortnight? We can't just continue to go down that road of it being too difficult. Very much agree with what Dave Daniels said. It's so easy to recycle food waste. It's free. We make it easy. We provide the receptacles. It's clean because you can tie the bags up and just drop them in. And as a bonus, it's collected weekly, so you don't have to leave it lying around for a fortnight. And it can generate clean power as a result, which, you know, at the end of the day, everyone wants to do, because, again, no one wants to live next door to a power station as the alternative. So there's so many reasons why food waste is a no-brainer, and yet still we see the participation rates aren't where we'd want them to be. You just need to walk along the street come collection day and see the number of houses with no brown bins out. I accept in some cases that's because they're home composting or giving the food to the chickens like we sometimes do in the garden, but I don't think that accounts for that level of non-participation. So the more people can take it into their own hands and recycling as much as they can, the better for the future. Really pleased with how those 5 work streams have developed. I won't repeat what they are now, but I think it's key that all of those work together. It's not a case of one or the other, like sometimes the debate is. Yes, behaviour change is important. Service quality is important. You know, it's not either or. It's got to be all those things, not one or the other. I think it's important that we take a whole council approach to this, that we work together on this as a corporate priority. I would like to thank the Minister for the way that she's engaged with us as a council. As a council, we have chosen to listen. We've not chosen to take the easy route. Now I think it's on all of us to play our part in making it work. Any more questions before we finish? Or am I okay to move to the recommendations then? The recommendations are as outlined at the end of the report. At paragraph 8. I won't read them all out because there's recommendations 8A to K there. So it's recommended that actually I will for openness. It's recommended that the Cabinet approve the roadmap and design principles and assumptions for the service outlined, that we approve the strategic improvement plan, that we agree that the leaders, myself, will approve the final roadmap and strategic improvement plan, that we note the improvements in the service collection quality, that we stand down the T-Code project formally and agree that a letter sent from the leaders to the Minister for Climate Change to advise and seek agreement in principle for the Welsh Government to receive a further business case for capital support in 2024, that we note the work ongoing at the T-Code sites, that we approve the recycling transfer scheme project that remain with the Council's capital programme, that we note the intention to enter into discussions with the current contractor for the HWRC transfer station for short, medium-term extension of the contract to secure resilience and stability through delivery of this improvement programme, that we approve the business recycling design principles, give delegation to the Cabinet Member Environment, that's Mandy, to approve the service model, policies and charging structure, that we note the proposed communication behaviour change approach is funded by the Shared Prosperity Fund, and that we give approval for the leader, that's me, to approve the new governance framework and membership for the delivery of the recycling improvement programme. Are we happy to agree those? Great, thank you to everyone for their hard work on that, to Mandy and officers. Yeah, I look forward to continue to work on that project and to see it bearing fruit. Okay, item then is the item on the Springboard and Innovation Ecosystem. And if I hand over initially to Jo.
Thank you, Leader. So members will be aware that our economy and skills strategy is a balance of supporting both the foundation economy and the innovative competitive economy. Springboard Centre Income Brand is a key driver in the development of our innovative competitive economy. The business case responds to our worries on occupancy, with a plan to remarket the centre and upskill our staff to best support the businesses. I must thank the Head of Economy who joined us when work had already started on the business case and quickly recognised that we needed to include a building maintenance programme. This means we have a transparent and a realistic business case to consider today. Prosperous Scrutiny Committee first considered the future of Springboard in February 22, specifically if the current operating model remained fit for purpose given the decrease in occupancy levels and the subsequent reduction in income. Following a review of a report from Oxford Innovation in October 22, members recommended work began to scope option C3, entering into a third-party operator commercial partnership. Scrutiny members again recently considered the business case and made recommendations which are reflected in the final amendments. The full business case recommends a preferred way forward for Springboard Centre with a refreshed future operating model. The future model will move Springboard towards a position of less dependency on core council funding and within a relatively short period of time. It will still deliver its core aims of providing essential innovation support to grow businesses in Torfaen. The centre will be at heart of the business community, whether that's online or in person, with a skills support team and the facilities needed to thrive. Today we're asked to consider approval of the business case, which will deliver the transformation needed for Springboard so it can be viable, sustainable and a flagship for entrepreneurial activity in Torfaen, and also to use reserves to fund a programme of targeted capital investments over a 3-year period. I'll hand to Gareth Beer, Head of Economic Development, to go through the detail of the report.
Thank you. If I just talk through the high-level, the highlights of the report. I wasn't planning to go through the full business case in much detail. It's fairly long, and actually the key points are summarised in the cabinet report. So just briefly, in terms of background, section 3 of the report notes how Springboard has generally been very successful for encouraging innovation and business growth within Torfaen since it was first established in 2006. With high levels of business creation, so 126 businesses have located within Torfaen over time, and some have grown out of Torfaen, out of Springboard, sorry, and 750 new jobs created over that time period. And up until the 2019-2020 financial year, Springboard's occupancy rate had been very good, traditionally operated above 80%, and in 2019-20, I think the occupancy rate was just over 70%. So, generally speaking, Springboard has been a really good asset for Torfaen. Springboard has been adversely impacted by the COVID pandemic, with the advent of people principally working from home, and hasn't really recovered significantly since that point in time. Hence the review process that was started with scrutiny back in February 2022. So the review process has taken place over the past 18 months or so. It's looked at a full range of potential options for Springboard. I think 8 in total, ranging from at the one end of the scale, disposal of the asset, through to options that we'll talk about in a second, and through to, for example, the possibility of either selling or leasing the entire building to a third party, which would obviously remove the innovation facility within the centre. Section 4 of the report focuses on the preferred option. Option C3, as the executive member has already mentioned, and that was the preferred option that came through the scrutiny process, and is based on the independent advice received from Oxford Innovation, and there's details of that within the full business case, and also other independent advice around property and the visibility of Springboard in the market. So option C3 recommends that Torfaen, as the local authority, retain and continue to operate Springboard as an innovation centre, but with some additional targeted measures in place to improve the prospects of Springboard's future success. So the full business case proposes a series of these targeted measures. As the executive member mentioned earlier on, a full business, a full building conditions survey has been undertaken of the centre. So we've got a much better perspective on the backlog of repair and maintenance that's required, which is relatively substantial. The recommendation within the full business case and the report is that a targeted limited programme of essential building improvements is undertaken in the first instance, focused around the first 3 years of activity. Alongside that, the preferred option includes the bringing on board of a specialist innovation partner or innovation centre operator to work with the existing Springboard team to provide mentorship, to assist with marketing and networks and to help improve systems and processes. Another measure proposed is the recruitment and retention of a commercial property agency to help with Springboard's visibility in the market and to help drive pipeline of potential occupiers. And finally, being much clearer on Springboard's role in the region, the vision and the entrance criteria. So all of those are addressed in detail within the full business case. In terms of the detailed programme of essential building improvements, the costing exercise that's been undertaken on that programme of work over the first 3 years results in a gross cost of £655,000. But as part of the review work, we identified a range of potential sources of funding, so that the net cost of the 3-year programme of building investment works would be £343,000. Alongside that, a combination of the building improvements, the enhanced business support and stronger marketing will, we project within the financial models within the report and within the full business case, allow rents within Springboard to be increased incrementally over a 3-year period, and also occupancy levels to be driven up to a much higher level than they currently are. So at the moment, occupancy is hovering around the 50% mark. The aim is to drive that up to over 75-80% by the end of the 3rd year of implementing the business case. And that would move Springboard from a position where it's currently a net drain on council resources to the tune of £210,000 currently, to a position where the facility is much more financially self-supporting. So the recommendations within the paper, the recommendation to Cabinet is to approve the full business case and the £343,000 net expenditure requirement. Also to authorise access to the economy and environment specific reserve for that purpose. I think that was it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. Any questions? Sue?
Yeah, thanks very much for the report, and just some questions around the unlikely event that maybe option C4 or C or option D might they remain options in a potential scenario in the future. So those are very unlikely to be needed. Would be very unlikely, if I'm understanding this right, to ever need to consider leasing the building or selling or disposing of the building. But if we are putting investment into it, I'm assuming that that will add to the value of the lease that we might then enter into, or the value of the sale price of the building, so it would still be recouped to the public purse, is what I'm saying. I looked at those sort of backstop options and thought, ooh, that looks worrying, and then I thought about the added value that we'd be putting onto the property. I'm guessing that's all been considered as part of that option appraisal?
Yes, Councillor. So the investment programme over the first 3 years is designed to allow us to make some informed judgments at that point in time as to whether Springboard is, I'll say, financially viable. It's never going to be financially viable in a commercial sense, but is able to effectively break even. The investment work that takes place over that time period and the increase in rental levels and occupancy would in a worst case scenario, then enhance the value of the asset should the decision then be taken to dispose. And equally, if a decision was taken at that point to lease to a third party, the improvements in the building would make the building more attractive and generate a higher rental level.
Thank you. Very satisfied with that answer. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I'd just say thank you to Joe, Gareth, Dawson and the Economic Development team for their work on this and their continued support for businesses at the Springboard and beyond as well. The recommendations are at paragraph 8 is that we approve the Springboard full business case and agree to support the net council expenditure requirement of £343,000 in total to fund a programme of targeted capital investments over a 3-year period between April 2024 and March 2027. We authorise access to the economy and environment specific reserve to fund that expenditure. Are we all happy to agree the recommendation? That's agreed. Thank you. Okay, we move on to item 9 then, which is the rapid rehousing plan, and I'll hand over initially to Anthony Daniels.
Thanks, Leader. So essentially, the rapid rehousing transition plan is an ambition from Welsh Government, which aims to prevent and mitigate homelessness and treat each incident as rare, brief and repeated. And today's report is essentially just our outlining our efforts towards engaging and delivering on that ambition. The logic and the evidence behind this is a solid one. We know that where we're unable to prevent homelessness in the first place, the next most crucial point of intervention is the initial event itself. And in plain terms, that's essentially that as soon as someone's homeless, how long they stay homeless and how they bounce back from that period of homelessness is very much dictated by them receiving the right sort of support at the right time and being given appropriate housing as soon as possible. The rapid rehousing approach is one we're wholeheartedly for. The principles are principles that we've been adhering to ourselves for many years and delivering on in various different interventions. If you look to paragraph 4.5, you can see the tremendous efforts of our housing teams translating these principles into crucial changes towards delivering a more effective and tailored approach to homelessness in Torfaen. So I'll run through a few of these. This is just a snapshot. It's already received quite a bit of coverage, but the forthcoming completion of additional supported accommodation at Bill House will provide a provision which far better delivers for individuals who find themselves homeless, in line with the principles of the rapid rehousing plan. It caters much better than just simply placing someone into a temporary accommodation and providing support, but peripatetic support. They will be in the building with 24-hour support there, and that is the big difference that makes. And that will hopefully lead to individuals who are placed into Pearl House coming out in a more resilient and sustainable tenancy when they do come through the system. We've reconfigured Hales House to become a generic supported housing project, and Tycufla in Aberystwyth has shifted its purpose towards supporting supported living for young people. Both projects now realise a greater potential for those people who access their services. We've sourced more temporary accommodation units from registered social landlord partners, with more in the pipeline. We've made great strides in reducing our need to use out-of-county B&Bs and hotels, as the report details. As of November 2023, we had no one in either of those provisions, and we were only one of 2 local authorities to do so at that point, the other being Ceredigion. I must caveat that. I mean, I'm at risk of doing us down, but that can change. You know, the housing and homelessness situation is so volatile that can change. It could have changed tonight, today, but you know, we very much do need to celebrate wins when we've got them, I suppose. And waiting times for this is one of the most important ones for me. Waiting times for families to be housed into permanent accommodation is reduced from 7 months in 2020 to an average of 3 months currently. And for single person, this remains higher, but is reduced from 15 months to 10 months in that same period. I will add that during the pandemic, those figures were much higher, and that I lost sleep over that because we had people backed up on the temporary accommodation list, waiting to go into temporary accommodation. And you know, it was a very challenging circumstance. So we have come a long, long way since the pandemic now, and I think it's again a win worth recognising. So as I said at the beginning, it's just a snapshot of the achievements of our Torvine housing teams working in spite of a worsening crisis. It feels a bit like a platitude to say that the housing situation is as bad as I've ever known it, because I say it so often. But it's because there doesn't seem to be an interest, a recognition of the scale and importance of the crisis at a UK government level. To their credit, Welsh Government do seem to get the gravity of the housing situation, and they're trying to address it with what resource they have available to them. But any path out of this housing crisis that we're in, this housing emergency, I think you should probably refer to, will require substantial commitment from UK government, and that just at the moment does not seem to be forthcoming. If you look to the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan, it outlines some of the current housing picture, some of the challenges that we currently face here in Torvine, and which is very likely replicated all across Wales and the UK, and what our housing teams are having to contend with. So it's a substantial document, but I do recommend, if you have an interest in housing and would like to understand what the current picture is, it's a very, very good snapshot of it. Between 2020 and 2023, the average house price in Torvine has risen from nearly 179,000 to nearly 200,000. Add in that the interest rates are now 5.25%. This paints an incredibly difficult set of circumstances for those seeking to get a mortgage or sustain their mortgage they've got. For those that cannot now afford to take out or sustain a mortgage, the private rented sector has also seen an increase in rents that is proving prohibitive for many people. For example, in 2019, the average rent for a one-bed property was £415.48 a month. Now, in 2020, well, it's 2024 now, that figure is £615. So that is a substantial increase, and that's for a one-bed property. And that is taking a bigger chunk of people's disposable income, which then, in effect, means that it's even harder for people to save to get a mortgage. So it's just totally eliminating one avenue of housing for a lot of people. And the increasing cost of private tenancy is potentially preventing people from accessing that market itself. And we've got an underdeveloped market in Torvine as it is, which leaves socially rented accommodation where we are and have been for some time oversubscribed. The average wait time for a property on the housing register is 1.5 years, with the even longer waiting times for those seeking a property in the south of the borough and for one-bedroom properties. So hopefully this is providing a snapshot of the increasingly challenging climate we're living in for those seeking to buy or rent a home, and to tie into the Rapid Rehousing Plan the challenges we face as a local authority as we try our hardest to deliver against the ambitions of the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan. That's all I have for the moment, but I've got Lyndon Puddy present in the meeting, who will no doubt fill in the many gaps that I've missed.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Daniels. Just in terms of, Councillor Daniels laid out the difficulties it's facing the housing sector, and some of the pressures that every local authority in the UK is facing at the moment. In terms of this rapid rehousing plan, it's not new. It's something that we've been working on in terms of the delivery for many years, and it's been our core activity in particularly around the delivery of supported housing, which is of a particular pressure in the UK at the moment. Just to give members an example, we've seen over 100% demand for supported housing on our waiting list, and our current waiting list for supported housing exceeds 200 households. So the delivery of this plan is important in how we manage our housing services going forward. And as Councillor Daniels highlighted, there has been some successes in the work we do, but we've got a very long way to go. So underpinning a lot of the work of this rapid rehousing plan is we established what's called the Strategic Housing Partnership, which is a partnership of the local authority, our key RSL partners, planning, the voluntary sector and the support sector. And we've delivered across that Strategic Housing Partnership a set of strategic leads and a set of strategic delivery plans, which, if members look on page 33 of the Rapid Rehousing Plan, some of the activity there surrounds the work that the Strategic Housing Partnership is doing. I won't go through that in any detail with members this morning, but it covers areas of concern that I know members have. That's increasing the capacity of supported accommodation in the borough. Just mentioned to members that there's a pressure there to look at how we manage our temporary accommodation supply, and Councillor Daniels outlined the Pearl House scheme that's coming on board, how we manage land, how we look to interact our support services and strengthen and build the collaborative opportunities that we have across the Strategic Housing Partnership to help manage this provision. The greater detail are included within pages 32, 33, 34, 35. But these solutions won't be done in a year. They are multi-year actions that will require a concerted effort from both our internal housing service and with partners to be able to deliver and develop across the key aims of the rapid rehousing policy, or plan, sorry. With that in mind, Leader, Councillor Dan has outlined the other key elements of it. The progress is ongoing, as I said, with the Strategic Housing Partnership, and we will be looking to report on the first year of that activity within Q3 of this year as part of our service planning process. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you to Lyndon, to Dave and to Simon and the team for the progress on that. I know it's a difficult area, but it's good to see we're making progress and we're doing our best to help rehouse people, and as well as preventing homelessness as we can, using things like the discretionary housing payment scheme. Any questions or comments before we move to the recommendations? The recommendation is that the rapid rehousing plan is endorsed and approved by Cabinet. I can have a show of hands. That's carried. Thank you, colleagues. That's the final agenda item. I hope you have a nice rest of the day. And that closes Cabinet.